AI is a universal topic. I mean, we even have a space company now buying an AI coding tool. So I think the rocket, I guess, was already the pre-emphasis, so to say, of SpaceX buying Cursor. No, just kidding. But what I want to say is, I think AI is in every conference, as we prove. It's on every agenda, and it's in every board meeting. So I think there's no doubt that AI is here, and we have to deal with it. We have to think about how we can embed it. But I said it earlier as well. I don't believe that honestly AI is the constraint. It's not the model. We have a wealth of models out there right now you can choose from. But what I really think is the constraint is the foundation underneath, the boring work, as we call it, which the Hapag team actually has done so nicely, right? Installing all of these IoT devices actually to ultimately get to the complete picture. This is the work we need to do. And I think that's really what today is about, having a conversation on how can we do this boring work? How can we accelerate also that work so that ultimately you are in a position to use the data, the complete data, in order to transform your business models and also deliver on the customer promises and experience, because that's ultimately what we want to do. So AI, just for the AI's sake, is not the goal, but basically the context we need, the data we need in order to deliver on the business outcomes and ultimately fuel AI. That's what it's really about. So I think what we can say there, we don't have a problem which is lack of AI. But what we see, especially in supply chains, the underlying problem is fragmentations. What we heard, thousands of containers, right? Thousands of business partners you have to deal with, thousands of systems and different data standards. They don't talk naturally to each other, and they don't have a common language, basically, they share in order to make that easy. Yeah, there are a lot of initiatives happening, as also Arne said. I think it's across industries, but it takes time to really get on a common denominator. So the question is more like, okay, if this is not there, how do you solve that? So fragmentation is really where visibility programs stall. And there are a lot of visibility players out there, but still most of these initiatives have not delivered the value we were hoping for. Same on the forecasting side. So I think right now forecasting are still estimates, but not really reflecting the truth. So basically, our point of view at Lobster is that reliable AI can only happen if you have the right data foundation. And that's really what today is about, thinking about how we can solve that. And we had this in the opening. Why is this so difficult in supply chain? Because it's scattered. It's that fragmentation which we need to solve for in order to make sure AI can deliver on the promise. And 80%, if you really think about that, 80% sitting outside, which you don't control. And I think we saw a perfect example how you can get to completeness. And basically the initiative the Hapag team did was installing all of these devices on each and every container to make it work. And obviously now they help you with the 80% because you can connect to that API, ultimately get that data to get to a more complete picture for yourself. So I think here you see actually the ecosystem coming together with the shipper, ultimately to making sure we get to a better overall outcome. And I think this is also how we basically think of it at Lobster, that over the next 18 months, there's a way of helping you achieving that ambition of building that foundation. And it's basically a 3-step model. So first step is about control. So really thinking about how you get to the complete picture. So how do you make sure you extend your visibility beyond your tier 1 suppliers if you're a shipper? And I'll touch on what I mean with control, but I think this for me is about the visibility. So you have insight in your data, so you know your data. Then second step is really about embed. So what is happening right now, a lot of AI tools, but they are not ingrained in the way you do business. So you need to think about how you embed AI into your existing operations. So how do you speed up your operations? How do you make it more efficient and cost effective? And with that, basically get that competitive edge on being the player who delivers the best quality, for instance. So embedding AI into what you already do versus treating it as a side project. And then last but not least, it's also about flexibility or choose freely. So this means you don't place single bets. That can be on the integration path, as we've seen. It could be EDI, it could be API. You need to meet your customers or your business partners where they are, also from a digital maturity perspective. But it is also true for LLMs, and I'll touch on that in a second. But ultimately, the way you need to think about this, these are not free product features, right? These are really business levers. So it's about how you create that visibility, so you see ultimately. Then second is how do you act on it? So by embedding it really into the way you operate as a business, not data or AI as something separate, but really make it actionable. And then ultimately also having the flexibility to change direction if needed. It could be Iranian war or any other basically incident which we saw or challenge we have in these ecosystems. You need to ultimately redirect resources or the like. And if you think about those three, I touched on this already, it serves a single outcome, which in our belief is autonomy. So the ability to be in control of your own response if something happens. So these are the three steps, and I'll touch on this a bit more from a framework perspective. And then we have a similar setup as the Hapag team. We have also two technical experts, Jethro and Patrick, who will go a little deeper on how you can solve that from a technology point of view. So when I say control, usually the picture looks like this, especially from a shipper perspective. I know we have various perspectives, but I think ultimately it's the same. I think you have a good relationship with your tier one suppliers. Usually there's also really good communication happening and collaboration happening. But usually beyond tier one, kind of things fall apart. You're not in control, you're not even collaborating anymore. And I think a lot of the times the digital maturity of tier two or tier three is where things basically fall between the cracks and where you don't have that connection and visibility. So, and you're not alone in this. So this is not something we make up, so to say. Only 2% really have visibility beyond tier one, tier two. So this is a common thread across the industry. But however, 1/3 of the disruptions are happening exactly there. They are caused by a tier two supplier or tier three supplier. So extending that visibility is super important. And again, that means solving for that fragmentation. And then also 67% basically, so 2/3 say that visibility programs basically stall because they can't reach that fragmented 80% ultimately. So extending your reach, not controlling, I think in sense of ownership, but in the sense of building that visibility, because that will become increasingly important. If you think about all the regulatory initiatives coming at you right now, they all depend on having visibility across these different tiers and across your entire ecosystem, no matter if digital product passports, CBAM, EUDR. I could continue probably with another 10, but they all depend on the same data. And if you basically have that visibility, you're also able to respond to these regulatory initiatives. Second, embed. So this is really about the acting part. As I said, what we see right now, you have basically a single tool, AI, with a single login, with a single data copy, but it basically lives outside your operations, next to the business processes. So it's alongside the business processes, but not embedded. We believe that AI needs to be embedded in your shipments, embedded in your orders, embedded in the exceptions, so that we basically have the ability to improve these business processes. And don't get me wrong, I think there's also re-architecting of business processes needed, but it can't live side by side. It needs to merge ultimately in order to execute your AI initiatives. So we are a strong believer of thinking about that orchestration layer on how you make your existing business ultimately smarter. So again, this is about the acting part. And now last bit is about the flexibility. There should not be any single bet. And I think the Fable 5 example, I think all over LinkedIn, all of you read it, is one of those reasons. I think the CrowdStrike example a few years back is another one. You need to think about that optionality. You need to think about basically the flexible architecture, which allows you to swap out certain aspects if something goes wrong. That is true for the integration path, so I wouldn't pick a vendor who can only do EDI, because as Arne said so beautiful, I think the world is moving to real time. So you need to have the ability to go ultimately across different integration paths. But the reality is also the whole industry still runs on EDI. So you need to be able to do this at scale. But I think, again, you need to have multiple options. Second one, same with the LLM. I mean, there are scenarios where maybe you can work with Copilot type of capabilities, right? The vendor offers, such as us or Microsoft. But there might be also scenarios where the data is more sensitive, where you want to run something locally. But again, I think it needs to be dependent on the type of workload you run, and ultimately also the standards you have from a cybersecurity perspective and data residency perspective. But again, built-in flexibility is the key. And same is true for deployment. We'll also touch on that, but I think also here we will see more and more, again, hybrid deployments. Yes, there are workloads in the cloud. There will be workloads which you might want to run on-prem, or you still need to run on-prem because that's just where your legacy infrastructure sits. And again, so to summarize it, I think these are three business levers we see. So it's about ultimately gaining the visibility. So see your data, then it's about acting on that data and building in that flexibility to change direction if the world basically makes you do that or need to do that. So I think that's how we think about it. And we operationalize that with the Lobster data platform. These are 4 layers ultimately to help you with those 3 business levers. And again, we are part of that, not the answer to everything, but we can help you with that autonomy. So ultimately, maybe touch on 3 things. Supply chain collaboration with trading partner manager, which we launched, was ultimately getting to this visibility. So getting access to the 80%, making it easier to also work with business partners who are not as digital mature as you might be. So web EDI is a big topic here as well, but ultimately improving the collaboration with your trading partners. Orchestration, again, is really about embedding it into the workflows you already have. And then integration and platform services is basically the flexibility part. So no matter if it's deployment, no matter if it's your integration path, this is really meant to give you flexibility. And I would argue we have the most powerful mapping engine in the industry. And to show you that, I would like to get Jethro and Patrick on stage to really show you how we do that.
Thank you, Tim. So I would like to take a bit of a deeper look with all of you on how we can help you not only connect your supply chains, but also run them in production. Because it's never only about the connections. It's always about how do you run this longer term. So how we look at the world, it's basically 2 things when you think about orchestrating your supply chain data flows. On the one hand, it is about building the integrations that you need, but then it's also operating them at scale over many years and with a lot of data load. So for typically your customers, it starts with discovering the needs that you have. So which systems do you want to integrate internally? Which trading partners do you have which are relevant for you to get data from or send data to? Then it is about connecting your systems and your trading partners. So the nitty-gritty technical connectivity protocols are super important here. Once you've done that, it's a lot about transforming data. So like Tim mentioned, mapping, basically saying, how do I get from this data structure to something else that maybe my ERP understands, while my supplier may set me a completely different format. And once you've done that, there are many cases where it makes sense to have a human in the loop. For example, to validate data before you process it further downstream. Or when your supplier may not be able to send you automated data flows and you need web EDI, for example. Then it's about testing. So whatever you build, please always test. I hope you all do that, but I think it's very important because mission critical workloads should not fail. Then you bring it to production through our deployment cycles. This is where freedom of choice becomes so important, and we touch that topic a bit later. And finally, it's about monitoring. So making sure that whatever you've built runs reliably, safely. I was talking to a customer yesterday evening, 24/7 at scale. Whenever you sleep, you need to make sure that the platform runs and your data still flows. And then you may discover a partner changed its format, so a job starts to fail and the discovery cycle starts all over again. So building and operating should always go hand in hand. And that's why I'm so proud of our platform, because we do all of that together, all of it under governance in one platform. So no fragmentation, no different tool sets, one skill set, one way how you do security and compliance and policies around it for both building and operating your data integration flows. I think that's key. But I don't want to talk about it, let's say, the whole day. We would also really like to show you a little bit more. And we do that by looking at 3 of our demo companies. So we have a retailer called Summit Gear. They spend a lot of time on manual processes. We have a manufacturer, Adventure Engineering. They produce outdoor equipment. So think hiking poles, kayaks, things like that. And they ship them towards Summit Gear, who then sells them towards their customers as an outdoor shop. And A to Z Logistics sits in the middle. They're a logistics company, and they make sure that the physical goods keep flowing. So we would like to look at what we can do for each of these 3 companies all along the supply chain. So let's dive in and let's start with Summit Gear, because just like I think many of you in the room here today, Summit Gear wants to benefit from the advantages that AI has to offer. But they also figure out that in order to get to the data that they need, they will have to connect to over 400 different data sources on average, and this is real hardcore data, along their supply chain to get to the right information. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tim already spoke about it. All of those data sources are fragmented. And once they are able to connect, they find that data is erroneous, it's too late, different file formats and systems. And this is a problem because 85% of AI initiatives today, they're failing, not because of the models, like Tim said, or the algorithms. They're failing because the data is not there, or the data is there too late. In this respect, AI is exactly like humans, right? We are also blind to what we cannot see. If I need to make a decision and I don't have the right information in front of me, I cannot decide. Exactly the same for AI, but at scale. So if you start to deploy AI without having your data strategy in place, you just amplify the noise instead of getting to more confident and clear decisions. And this is also what Summit Gear has. And then they have 2 ways to solve this. So one way is that you say, well, in order to become AI ready, I need to replace my core systems. This is what, of course, also core system vendors promise, right? If I go to my next version of the ERP, AI will be fully in there, or my next TMS will have AI capabilities. What the result is, and I think many of you have probably experienced it already, for example, an ERP replacement takes 18 to 36 months to complete, and in 55 to 75% of the cases, it runs over time and over budget. So this is not really helping you much, and it takes way too long. So that's the first option. Now the second option, and we want to show this to you live today, is to keep the core system in place, but instead, with our data platform on top, turn these core systems into AI-enabled resources. Because that way your data can stay in your ERP, you don't have to copy anything, you don't have to migrate or change your ERP system. You know it, you love it, it works. Keep it in place, but turn it into an AI-enabled resource through our capabilities. And for that, we will really look at a concrete case. So imagine Summit Gear, the retailer, they have a claims process when something goes wrong. So they ship, for example, a kayak or a hiking pole to a customer, and maybe the hiking pole gets lost along the way, or the kayak gets damaged. I think if there are retailers in the room, probably a recognizable topic. So the question is, how do you handle it? Because you need to coordinate your partners. Data have to be revisited in different systems. Do we have it on stock? From where can we ship it? How long does the shipment take? We just spoke about green and CO2 and sustainability. What's the CO2 footprint of this new shipment? All of those things need to be handled when this claim comes in. And this is a lot of work. At the same time, sometimes there's also low-value goods, like for example, the cheap hiking pole. You may not want to get experts involved, but you may want to do straight-through processing instead of humans. So AI can properly assist you with making those decisions and doing straight-through processing versus orchestrating humans, depending on how heavy or complicated the claim is. But for that, Summit Gear needs to be able to connect to all of the different systems and services you see on the screen. So I think it's a good moment to actually hand it over to Patrick, so he can show you, instead of talking about it, how we can help a company like Summit Gear solve this challenge.
Thanks. I think it was interesting with Hapag-Lloyd, they mentioned as part of their quality initiatives, they had a thing in there about claims, about handling exceptions for their customers. And this is one of those things that is very time consuming, oftentimes involves lots of different systems. What we'd like to do here is show that out of a retail point of view. So I'm going to take the role now of the company Summit Gear. See if I can get this to stand up here correctly. Okay. Summit Gear, as a retailer, has to handle lots of claims. And these claims often take a lot of time. Handling these claims then is one of the things that is actually not that much fun. I had my own retail company. And basically what happens when you do these things is, as soon as I open an email, as soon as I deal with this claim, I've probably already lost money on it. And if you look at it then, many of these things are fairly easy to analyze if I know what's going on. In this case, we've used AI to look at the priority and AI to come up with a suggestion on how we should solve this claim. What we have in here is a summarization of what the actual claim involves. And then we used the systems mentioned before, a CRM, maybe it's warehouse availability, maybe it's information about the product. We've used that to figure out, should this be processed by a human or can we just do this automatically? And we've had the AI then give us an idea why they've done that. So it seems to be a cosmetic issue here. The item's not that expensive. We have a lot of them on stock. And it doesn't seem like the customer is particularly upset or anything like that. And actually, they're pretty happy with this and there. So for this case, it makes no sense for a person to get involved in this. Those 14, 15 euros, ship them a new one, it's done. I don't have to have a single employee involved in that. So this is a typical case that you'll have. And the best way to do this then is you're quicker, you're faster, and you're saving a lot of money on doing this. This is also a very good way to increase your customer satisfaction. Now, obviously, not everything is coming that way. There are tricky cases. There are things where you want to have more information. I'd like to show you how Lobster can handle that as well. Ideally, we handle as many of these claims as possible, but sometimes you don't want to have to look into the system every day or look in the system every hour to find out which claims are difficult. Well, Lobster allows you to notify over any system you can imagine. We particularly used here an example in Teams. So instead of getting an email or something like that, in Teams it pops up, the customer service person who sees this can grab this claim. Oh, I've got one here that's a bit of a problem. Let's take a look at that one. When we jump in here, we can jump right into the claim. And we can see here now that AI said this is a high priority one. We need to take a look at this. This is something that is probably not one that we just want to process automatically. We need to figure out what's going on. And the reasons why: it's a high value product, it's for an important customer. They're actually listed here then as somebody that it's maybe at platinum status. And it seems like they have urgent delivery requirements. So this is the sort of thing where I need to make some decisions. But the decisions on how I replace this thing is a little bit difficult to figure out. And what I'd like to do is show you how you can use AI attached to all the different systems that Lobster showed, or that Jethro showed you before, to do that. And we've done this using AI to show you what are our options. And these options are based on accessing data in different systems. If we go down here, we'll see different ones. We can offer a different product. The AI said, this is a specialist person. This is a canoe expert. They're going to want exactly the thing they ordered. Here we can ship from Berlin. We checked the inventories in our Berlin warehouse. Here we checked actually from the store. So we went into the point of sale system, figured out what inventory was, and decided we wanted to do that. We, of course, in every step here, as mentioned before, looked at the CO2. And the AI suggests that we use express replacement directly from the supplier. So on hand from availability of the supplier, the 80% that Tim mentioned before, outside of my walls, I checked their availability, found out what times of delivery, found out what it would cost with CO2, found out the purchase price in my ERP, and decided that's what the AI recommended. This is purely accessing all this data through Lobster. Let me give you an idea what this means in the background. If we go into Lobster here, 1 second, I can show you what this looks like. So let's go into Lobster here and find out how this happens. This has been done over an MCP server. This allows Lobster to access various backend systems. And we set this up here with different tools. So we can send emails, we can create the claims itself. We can get product information from a warehouse managed system. So it's in the Berlin warehouse or it is in the Munich warehouse. We've got things from the CRM. Is it a high value client or not? And of course, we're going outside and asking for supplier availability. So using this, whether it's a legacy system, an external API, it's an internal system, it's some old format that's there, we can connect those, offer them to the AI, and AI can use these to make decisions. Now, doing this, that's a lot of connections, and this is actually a simplified version of it. You want to keep visibility of that. Tim mentioned visibility. Tim mentioned also connecting everything. And this is how Lobster can give you an idea what's going on here. This is showing how one claim uses email, CO2 calculations, product availability, data of an ERP. Everything we're connecting to can be shown visibly within Lobster. At the same time, control got mentioned here. So this is just showing where we're connecting to everything. But if we want to actually see control, we have that option as well. So let's go back into our claim here and take a look here. This claim number is number 2254. Let's go in here and put in, this one was processed a little bit back. Let's put in 2254. So now we can see every single call, every single piece of data that flowed, all the information down to a system level information, what's happening. This is control, and this is happening in one location, despite it being multiple systems in the background. What I'd like to show you is then how this can also be done to not just analyze actual claims, but it can also be done to automate them. So if we go in here and we say, okay, the recommended option looks good. Yeah, it has a cost for express shipping charges, but we still think this is better because it can replace there. Let's just select this. So we had this pop up. The agent has been triggered. We've created an order. We've logged everything in our control center. Let's go back and see what this means here. If I go in here now and do a search, we've now got new lines. So what the AI has done is taken the suggestion, created an order, and informed the customer that their claim has been actually taken care of there. This human decided, completely controlled by AI, connected to everything. That's, I think, what you were talking about, Jethro.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Patrick. Quite cool to see it all live in action. So what you just saw is how with the Lobster Data Platform you can connect to your core systems, which you already have in place, without having to upgrade or replace them. And through our MCP server, MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, turn that into an AI-enabled resource. So the AI could reason with this ERP system and with the TMS or WMS without having to do any upgrades. And the beauty of all of this is that your data stays yours, and you can bring your own large language model. So what we do not want to do, and based on Tim's principle of freedom of choice, force you to use a very specific large language model or a specific vendor. You bring in your own large language model, you connect it through our MCP server with the core systems that you have, and the data stays there. So we don't copy it over, we don't store it in a central place. We just broker the, let's say, connection between the large language model that you pick, and which runs in wherever you want, towards your core system. That also means that all of your security, let's say, policies and governance rules, they stay enforced based on whatever you have configured in your ERP. And I think that's a much smarter way to get ready for AI compared to having to first go through a full upgrade cycle on the promise of new or better APIs or things like that. So what you saw is how we helped Summit Gear to turn a time-consuming manual process of claims handling, leveraging multiple data sources, into something which both facilitates straight-through processing as well as high-priority exceptions with humans in the loop. The value for them is that they can now turn these core systems into AI-enabled resources without a system replacement, but also with a single governed system. So like Patrick showed, you have one overview where you can completely see how is data flowing in the process map across these different systems. And you can even look at individual messages and see what data did my AI solution grab from which system and why. And I think that's key, because you will probably not have one large language model or one agent or one AI solution, but 12, 18 months from now, you may have dozens. And then what you probably, I would not advise, or what you probably don't want, is that they all directly speak to your core systems, and you get like a spaghetti western of all kinds of different connections, and data flows everywhere outside of your visibility. So fragmentation, I think, is a challenge which is super important to get under control if you want to really keep owning your data. Now, in today's world, control of data is key, and we believe in freedom of choice. And that's why I'm very excited actually today to announce that we have validated that the Lobster data platform now also runs on the AWS sovereign cloud. That means that we know all of our components and services can run there, which allows you to have full autonomy in Europe while still being able to leverage AWS technology. And that's a major step forward for customers who want to benefit from AWS, but want to make very sure it's disconnected from US-based infrastructure. Now, in order to talk about that a bit more, I would like to invite Matthias Kratz from AWS on stage together with me.
Hey,
Hey, thank you for joining us.
thank you for having me.
Yes. So I would like to actually briefly talk about this because we're very excited about this. But maybe you can start with explaining to the audience what the AWS Sovereign Cloud is all about and how it's, let's say, different from regular AWS.
Oh yes, that's a good question. I'm getting that very, very often currently. So the easiest thing is getting back to January 15th. This is where we went live with European Sovereign Cloud after roughly 3.5 years building it. And Claudia Plattner, as head of BSI, she was on stage and she said, the future of hyperscalers in Europe lies exactly in the offer like AWS is building with European Sovereign Cloud. And what is that? That's, for me, the short answer on your question is, what is AWS European Sovereign Cloud? I think it's the future. And what we've done is, we took the experience of 20 years delivering cloud services in the market. That means we took all of what we learned, how to build a cloud environment nationally and internationally, and build a new cloud based on our experience. That new cloud is called European Sovereign Cloud, and it's completely physically isolated and logically completely independent from the rest of the world, or especially from US. That means we founded an own organization. We call that a governance structure. We have everything what we need to run European Sovereign Cloud in Europe. And we have as well the people running and operating that, 2,800 people, are European Union citizens being located in European Union and working under European law. And this is exactly why Claudia Plattner said the future of hyperscalers lies in what we are building with European Sovereign Cloud. This is because we took the innovation, we took the experience, but we make sure that we have no dependency on any other countries outside of Europe to run European Sovereign Cloud.
Yes, thank you. So why? Yeah, I think it's a very important topic because we get a lot of questions from customers. Where is my data going? Am I still in control? What happens if something goes maybe wrong in the US or things like that? But why do you think it's the most important thing to consider leveraging a more European data center, let's say?
Absolutely, because the world changed. And we heard it, you mentioned we need options. And the world changed within the last 3.5 years. And when I was talking on customers on digital sovereignty by end of 2024, every customer wants to talk about resiliency of the cloud. And that was all related to technology topics like how we handle earthquakes, how we handle flood or even power outages. Today, everyone wants to talk with me on resilience against geopolitical influence or political influence. And this is why it became so important for our customers to give them possibilities and options to use the same things what they're using today in AWS as well in European Sovereign Cloud.
Yeah. So is it then fair to say that with this you can have a multi-cloud strategy but still leverage the same technical components underneath?
I like that. Because a customer of mine, he said to me, it was beginning of the year, after presenting and diving deep into European sovereign cloud, he said, "Oh wow, that sounds for me like multi-cloud with a single provider." And I think
Yeah.
that's your question.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we took everything what we learned on the last 20 years. Means we have the same service, same feature, same API, everything what our customers, what you maybe build in AWS is seamlessly running in European sovereign cloud.
Yes, exactly. So to round that topic off, for us it's important that you decide where you run. So it can be the fully managed Lobster cloud, it can be AWS sovereign cloud, you have a private cloud, maybe it's Azure. If you have a manufacturing company, you may want to even run on your shop floor. The decision is yours, but with this enhancement of our collaboration with AWS, you now have the option to pick sovereign cloud as well. So thank you very much for joining us, Matthias.
Thank you very much for having me.
So let's continue to our next, let's say, point of view, which is around trading partner integration. Because to do what you just saw SummitGear do with the claims process, they had also to integrate with trading partners. So we want to switch a little bit the perspective and take the viewpoint of A2Z Logistics, the logistics company. So they want to integrate with their trading partners, with their customers, for example, but also the other companies they work with. And we want to show you how our trading partner manager helps them, so helps A2Z Logistics to connect with companies like SummitGear in a fully self-service way, including topics like certificate exchange. So for that, I would like to hand it over back to you, Patrick.
Thanks, Jethro. Tim mentioning before plumbing, I think is a very apt analogy. As a logistics provider, I need to connect to my partners, and that needs to be up and running, and it always needs to work. So in this case, we're giving you an example of how a company like A2Z Logistics would connect to one of their partners, SummitGear. And now, this might seem like a simple thing, and actually, technically, with a platform like Lobster, it's actually not that difficult. But what I'd like to show you is the problems around that and what Lobster is doing beyond the bits and bytes to improve this process. Here we've got a list of different partners that we're connected to. In the logistics business, I change partners frequently. I'm adding customers, I'm removing customers, I'm having regional carriers, I'm having additional other carriers. I need to connect to them often, and it's a very dynamic process. I'd like to show you how that works. So in this case here, we've got a list of partners. I could add them technically here, just making a few clicks, but that's not the problem. The problem is the communication, the coordination, the organization. And I would like to show you how Lobster can help you do that then. So we have here, as mentioned, the trading partner manager. This is a function inside of Lobster that allows you to connect easily to your partners outside of your ecosystem. And now what I'd like to do is show you how this process works, because it might seem, like I said, simple on with that, but it's the coordination aspects that become difficult. Let me log on here. And what I have here is a platform running on Lobster's infrastructure that allows me to connect to my partners. And in this case, I want to connect to SummitGear. So let's add a new partner here. I will copy paste that because typing will take too much time. So I add in the company here. I add in information here. I'm just going to put the company name in instead of a first name. We'll make this simple here for demonstration purposes. And I add in a last name. And then I add in here as well an email. Here for demo purposes, it's going to us. So remove that and put it in here. So you might be thinking, okay, why do I need all this? Because you're doing this anyway. You have to connect your partner. You do it by email. You write this in an Excel list. You track that, or you don't, which is actually what we happen. So the number of partners we have that are using Lobster that are actually doing this manually is quite surprising. Now we have the ability here then to inform the customer. This can be branded in the Lobster customer's design. And we have the possibility here then to say, okay, let's save this and let's send this out here. So I've sent this out here and I now have an invitation draft. This status is tracked all the way through. That means every time something changes in the status with the connection with my partner or the invitation, that's managed. This could be an onboarding campaign and so on. We've even written software for this because people have problems keeping their Excel lists, their other systems up to date. Let's go in here then and add an actual channel. So I can connect to them in various different ways. Before we saw that, despite API being the coolest thing, lots of businesses run on EDI. So let's set up a connection here that's a bit, let's call it more old-fashioned. So we, of course, have the ability to connect to production, test, on development systems. We don't want to just turn this on live, but for our purposes, we have that. We can use SFTP, and I can also manage which type of direction is happening here. So I'm going to just manage that and our request channel. And now if you go back out here, you'll notice we've got here, invitation is sent. So I'm managing this entire process in one system that's connected to Lobster. I don't have to update this. I don't have to send emails. I don't have to put it in some other list. I have that all happening right there. So when I have that all set up that way, we have the ability to actually track the connection status. And that's one of the most annoying things is I'm trying to connect 500 partners, and I don't know where I'm at with each one. Did I call Bob back? Is Susie's, did she test the connection? Do I have the certificate there? Well, let's take a how this looks on the other side then. Let me switch over here then. And I'm going to switch now over. I'm now Summit Gear. So ideally here, we'll see if it showed up here. I've got an email saying, log on to this system here. I'm A to Z. I'd like you to connect to my partner manager. So let's go out here and set this up. Now, one of the hidden advantages of this is it doesn't matter what time zone I'm in. If I'm working late, if I'm in a different time zone, if this is the weekend, I don't have to wait for them to do anything. I can start doing this self. So this self-service onboarding, is possible here. Let me grab this here to do this a little bit easier. The self-service onboarding allows the partner to work asynchronously on setting things up. And that's a huge difference when we look at what's going on in these processes. I don't have to wait for an email from my partner. I don't have to wait for anything for them to send them a certificate. I don't have to send passwords via different systems. I can do it all in one. Let me see here, not that I did something wrong. Let's try here. And here's the challenge with a live system, as always. I'm going to do this differently here. Hopefully I can correct this now. After testing this 6 times, sometimes you have challenges. Let's get this set up. Actually, this is the part I thought would go well because I've tested it several times, but so as I log in here, we also take care of the actual legal aspects of this. In that case, then here, I actually have to confirm that I want to enter my data. Obviously, they were here under the GDPR requirements, then making sure that the actual data in here is saved and we're keeping it private. So I have here an actual request and a notification, and the notification says, I've been asked by my partner Summit Gear to connect to them. They want a new communication channel, and I can go immediately into this. So this request can come over any Lobster partner I have. So as Summit Gear, it's not that I have to log into 6 different systems if there's Lobster on the other side. It's all the same one. So if I log in here, I have and I have the option of saying stuff. I didn't set this up this time, but I can give firewall information. It needs to be a special port. There's different information there. IP address, of course, this is a dummy one. And I have the ability here to immediately download the certificate. Usually this is being handed off by email, or there's a different site, or I have to send them via Teams or some other message. That's one of the big advantages here is all the information required for me as Summit Gear to connect to A to Z is all in one place and presented securely. So I go in here and I have my settings here. So let me grab those. At this point here, then, I want to set up a connection to the SFTP server. Let me do that now here. So I put in my user, I put in the URL where that's at. So I'm allowing the connection here to happen. And I am putting in a password. Oh, not putting in a password, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I could upload my certificate here, and that will allow me to connect automatically. But what I have here is I want to save this, and right now I'll deploy. You'll notice here now in the deployment, it asks me for my password. I mentioned before data privacy, but even more important is data secrecy. In that case here, I don't want this password to exist in any location that isn't actually where it's needed. So in this particular case, this password is entered in here. I can confirm it. And that passport is sent in that moment over to the Lobster system here and is not saved anywhere in between. So we're paying very, very close attention to how these things set up. So I have right here now then all this set up. I've given the details of my SFTP server, and now I have to try and connect. And this is the sort of thing where oftentimes it goes back and forth. You couldn't connect, I couldn't test this. So this person here is sending emails to A to Z. A to Z is answering, and this can take days and sometimes even weeks because obviously there's other things to do besides just connect the system. What I'd like to show you now, though, is how this looks. So this is an SFTP server. I have an SFTP server client here to look at that. And at the moment, I don't have anything in the directory here. But if I go out here and start the test and go back here and update this, you'll notice I now have a file in here. What this means is the system from Lobster has sent a file over to the SFTP server here. So I've connected technically. Now, that's not enough. I actually want to make sure that it's the exact correct connection. So I take this string, put it in here, validate this, and now I've actually validated that the file and the settings done over here have sent a file over to my server, and I've validated that I've received this. If we jump back over to see what this does then on the side here, we can update here, and you notice we're connected, and even more than that, we now go back into the actual Lobster system. This is the system running, as Jethro mentioned, on cloud, on-prem, wherever you like. If we jump back in here and go into the trading partner manager, or the trading partners here, you'll notice we now have Summit Gear connected via TPM completely set up. So this entire interaction was one setup here, and everything else was done self-serve that way. And that's how you connect thousands of partners in an easy, self-service, low-effort method.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Patrick. And I always push our teams to do demos live. So sometimes you have the demo effect. I must say we've done this multiple times on stage. It's the first time we have a demo effect. And the cool thing is the demo we were afraid of is still to come. So bear with us, the last one. Actually, we were way more nervous about. So let's see how that goes. I'm getting more excited by the minute, to be honest. But let's round this one off first. Well, Patrick gets mentally prepared for the last one. Trading partner connection. So typically, companies like A to Z have to go through this whole process asynchronously via email or phone or Teams messages. So asking about what's the server address, what firewall port do we need to open? Can you share me please your certificates? This all manual back and forth. Mistakes will be made because the testing is not done live by the person who provides the information typically, which means that it's a lot of time spent onboarding these trading partners, onboarding suppliers or customers. And with this approach, you make it fully self-service, including testing and including security measures around passwords and certificates and the renewal of those certificates, which means we can greatly reduce the time in which you can onboard new trading partners. That's what you just saw. So it allows you to free up your IT capacity so they can work on more valuable tasks, while at the same time reducing the risk that something goes wrong or that the security, let's say, validation rules are not in place. So I think it's quite a nice way to rethink how you onboard trading partners in a fully self-service manner. And by the way, in this example, A to Z Logistics was the Lobster customer, and Summit Gear doesn't even need to be a Lobster customer. Those trading partners can be completely disconnected from the Lobster ecosystem from a technical point of view, but you can onboard them anyway. So I think that's quite a good approach to it. Now, to the final, let's say, scenario, we take the viewpoint of Adventure Engineering, a manufacturing company. And what they want to do is to connect with multiple different suppliers. And every supplier has their own standards. Some have EDI, others have APIs, like Arne and the team so greatly explained. Many are moving there. Some have nothing, so they want a web EDI type of approach. And at the same time, all message formats and structures are also radically different. Now, they need to work with these suppliers and want to onboard an Asian supplier in our example. And for that, they also want to track an ETA based on what Hapag-Lloyd just actually showed you before in the previous session. So how can Adventure Engineering benefit from our platform, connecting to Hapag-Lloyd, connecting different suppliers, all on one system? That's what we would like to show you as well.
Okay, for right now, I'm going to jump into the manufacturer point of view. and try and show you a little bit about what the challenges they have beyond the connecting. We showed that we can connect. We showed that we can use the data to do integrated processes with AI. What I'd like to show you now is how we make even other parts of this process easy. As Hapag-Lloyd mentioned, you have to meet your customers where they're at. You also have to do it with the suppliers oftentimes. If I want the best suppliers, I have to adapt to them. So Lobster is known for its EDI capabilities, as Jethro mentioned, web EDI, and we also have, of course, the ability to connect via API. Now, those are processes of exchanging shipment information, orders, forecasts, confirmations, things like that. Those are slightly standardized, but the way I connect to them technically is very different. What we show here then is that as a manufacturer, I can connect to my suppliers however I want. I can make sure that all of my suppliers are integrated and not just those that are able to handle modern APIs or those that have traditional EDI setups. I can connect to the non-technical suppliers as well with web EDI. But as we mentioned before, that whole path from the supplier, shipments here is what we're looking at, has to take place at some point. And that's where it gets less standardized, and that's where it gets lots less information is available. And I'd like to show you how Lobster can improve your access to that information and change from a supply link to a supply chain. Now, what we've done here, as you'll notice Hapag-Lloyd, is we've actually connected to Hapag-Lloyd's API. Very fascinating what they showed before. We actually are using data here that's come out of the Hapag-Lloyd system. So we've collected this over time. This latitude, longitude has actually been tracked over time. We've saved it by us, and we've added in here displaying it on a thing. Now you may ask, okay, why don't I use the Hapag-Lloyd one? Great, what they're offering. But the thing is I have to connect to a lot of carriers. Some of them are big. Few of them are doing what Hapag-Lloyd's doing, giving me a custom-made system that tells me my container everywhere. Because normally, this shipment part here is actually not done by the same carrier who's moving your ship across or your container across the ocean. And the last mile is not being done by the same carrier either. How do you get all the information that along that transportation chain, rail, sea, sometimes air freight, how do you get that connected when they all have different systems? I'd like to show you how Lobster can do that. It can speed these things up a little bit more. Because the challenge here is there's no standard format. Even if you get them connected quickly, you still have to deal with different structures. And I'd like to show how that can actually happen. And here I'll go a little bit under the hood and show you how that looks within Lobster. So in this case here, we have different tracking set up already. And some of these are bigger named, DHL and stuff like that, and we have connectors designed for them to help you get up and running. But for a lot of the other carriers, you're not going to have a standard. There's no place where you can go and download a specification or anything like that. You're going to have to figure out how their format maps to your format and how you can integrate that then. And I'd like to show you how that can look with Lobster. So what I'm going to do here is, obviously I'm looking here, container tracking. I may be doing this with different carriers, so I've already got a template set up on how I want to do that. So I go in here, set this up, I have an option here. In Lobster, here's where the magic happens, so to say. This is where I take a source format and map it to a target format. Now, depending upon the size of these formats, that can be a lot of work, but I'd like to show you how we're able to speed that up a little bit. What I'm going to do here is create a structure from a file. And what this is an actual JSON, as mentioned before, the API from Hapag-Lloyd. Nodding there. We actually thank you very much for your This was a back and forth. It went beautifully. It's kind of a joy to work with that sort of a setup compared to some of the more rudimentary forms. Obviously, Lobster masters them all, but this is a good example of how we do it. So we open this up, and we're actually now get a format in here. So I now have the structure of the file on the Hapag-Lloyd side. I wanted to get it into the format on the Lobster side, because obviously I can't have a Hapag-Lloyd format only. I have to adapt and get a generic format for all types of carriers. Now, how do we go about doing that? And here's where the part that gets nervous. One question here. Let's put this in here and save this. So let me save this here. So we've got this set up. So I'm going to save this. Let's go back into the mapping part, and let's ask if AI can do this for us. I'm going to grab this file again. Lobster saved it in there because that was what created the structure. And I'm going to let the mapping happen. At this point, what's happening? In Lobster, if you do this manually, we're known for very quick mappings, but still, you'd be sitting here, left to right, mapping a field, checking things, checking out, is this date, that date, what field matches what field? This is rather time-consuming if you have larger formats. What we have here is the ability to auto-map this. So let's take a look at what's happening here. We have matches of 19 fields. wants to review here. This is actually a payload. This actually doesn't affect there. So the container wasn't certain what to do. Payload maybe thought this payload is what's in the container. AI has still got some interesting to think, but what we do have here is matches of lots of different information. So we have lots of different actual fields that are automatically mapped. Now we have some no matches, but that's actually because we actually don't have those fields. We have more fields in our format than that because we're taking care of other carriers that might have some fields that Hapag-Lloyd doesn't, or there might be some information there, for example, on rail that we need or stuff like that. At this point, I can apply. It tells me what's there. I can do these actions. Can't be undone. So at this point then, I've actually gone in here. And if I go in here, let's take a look at this one. And you see latitude is actually mapped to latitude. So created the structure in less than a minute. Here, because I'm talking, it took a little bit more time, but I've mapped that structure on something that would take literally a long period of time and is fairly difficult to set. I've set that up, so I can save now. Let's do this. And even the best guys in my team, and I've got some really good guys in my team, would be challenged to do this as quickly as that. So I now have a profile to integrate the Hapag-Lloyd API. I can just activate it and start beginning my tests. That's how you speed up connections.
That was obviously the demo we were most excited about and nervous, because actually it's the first time we are showing our auto mapping capabilities live outside of our own four walls. We've been working on it for a while. You're the first group of customers and partners who get to see it. So at the break and at the dinner, please feel free to leave feedback or follow-up questions. We're quite excited about this because I think it's a huge time saver for people who create a lot of integrations. So it will auto-map the fields, but it will also give you confidence interval, like how sure is Pathfinder that this actually is the right mapping, and there will always be a human in the loop. So I think it's a super, super cool feature. And it's the beginning, right? Pathfinder already does a lot of things, and I would like to bring it back to the integration or orchestration cycle we talked about at the beginning, because Pathfinder clearly, with auto mapping, clearly sits in the transform part of the cycle. But as you know, we have released a fair amount of Pathfinder capabilities the last few months already, and they all play a role along this cycle. So Pathfinder is not one thing, just as integration is not one thing, it's always build and operate, and Pathfinder is there to help you, support you all along the way. So this is what's coming, what already is there. Auto mapping will come in 3 or 4 weeks when we have the release, mid-July. So available for everybody who's on the data platform. You can upgrade, you can use it. It's for free part of the platform. So feel free to explore and use it as much as you can. But there's much more coming. So over the course of the rest of the year, we want to add more things, like we're looking at generating portals and dashboards. We're looking at generating JSON and XPath. I think it's even also coming, if I'm not mistaken, already. Marco needs to keep me honest. No, next release, October. Sorry, yes, October. That will come in October. So there's more and more coming to make sure that you can spend time on where it matters most and not on, like Tim said, the boring plumbing stuff, because Pathfinder should help you. Now, longer term time, we will go much further, like think even self-healing message flows and things like that. So there's a clear roadmap behind this, because for us, Pathfinder is a big part of our future, helping you to get to integrations faster. So we wanted to share this, again, the first time anybody saw Pathfinder live, as well as this roadmap and this picture. So I hope it excites you. We're very, very excited about this, at least. Now, to round this off, what you saw is how adventure engineering can work with many different suppliers, different message formats, and the challenge was, how do you then manually map the data? And how we do it now with Pathfinder, it greatly reduces the time for you to create those mappings. And what you can then do is make sure that you can reuse also. So what Patrick just did is, on the left side, the source structure coming from Hapag-Lloyd, it will be different carrier over carrier. But to the right side, he mapped it to an internal format that the customer can use to then send it to their TMS, for example. And Pathfinder will know and learn both structures and integrate them together. So it means faster time to integration. For us, that's one of our key KPIs we internally also look at. What you saw today is how we bring together a full supply chain across all of these different organizations, A to Z logistics. So logistics company, adventure engineering and manufacturing, and Summit Gear in retail, connected together into one unified, fully integrated supply chain. And that's, I think, the promise we bring to all of you as our customers, together with our partners, of course. Now, to end this off, to bring it back to how Tim started, we feel AI, of course, is part of all of our futures. But it can only start with a clear data strategy in place. And for us, that contains 3 parts. First of all, make sure you control your data, both internally as well as that from your trading partners. Make sure you have access to it in a governed and safe way so you can leverage it for your AI initiatives. Secondly, then embed AI into your business processes, not just bolt it on top. So the example of where we started with, of Summit Gear, with the claims process, there you saw how AI is an integrated part of how that business process ran. It was almost not even visible anymore that it's AI. And I think that's the most successful application of it. Not this clunky chatbot bolted on top somewhere on the side, but really an agent orchestrating your business processes and making sure humans are in the loop where it is needed. That's true embedding AI for me, for us. And finally, stay flexible on your architecture. So make sure you can pick the cloud provider where you deploy or on-prem. Make sure you can pick the large language model that you want to use, not that the vendor pushes on you, because we don't know what the future holds. And I think this flexibility can turn out to be a competitive advantage for many of us here today. So if you remember those 3 things from today here in Hamburg, I think there's a lot of things you can achieve, or we can achieve together. With that, I will run this off and ask Rebecca back on the stage.
Thank you. Thank you, Jethro. Thank you, Patrick. Please do hang around. We've got a little bit of time now for a Q&A. So if you have any questions to the Lobster team, now is your chance to ask them. The QR code is up here on the screen, so just grab your phones, give it a scan, and we'll pick it up here on stage. But I'll get things rolling, get things moving, with one for you, Jethro, actually. So we've stressed the point of wanting to avoid the vendor lock-in aspect of things. And I think we've seen it recently with Fable 5 being revoked. If you've built your business on one particular input source, then if that then gets removed suddenly, then you're a little bit screwed. So the question is to you, is there any way to quantify that risk, or potentially from a financial perspective, from a business perspective? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think, of course, hard to quantify. But if you think about what happened with Fable, right? It was available for, I think, a few days from Anthropic, and then they had to pull it back due to the American administration. Now imagine if this would have been taken longer and you would have built all of your business on that particular large language model, and then it's gone, and you don't have the architecture behind it to switch to OpenAI or to another model of Anthropic. All the business processes you have built on that model will just stop. So the Summit Gear example, claims would no longer flow, right? So then you need to get back the humans 100% in the loop, but they may have been routed to other tasks. So I think the real risk is that some of your business processes will stop if you do not have the flexibility to quickly react to changes also in the technology market. And I think this is what happened to Fable 2 weeks ago. I think was kind of a wake-up call. We were also even talking about it because I think 1 year ago, even 6 months ago, it would have not been conceivable that US-based technology would have just been, let's say, drawn back.
Sure.
Now we see it happening. So that's why I think this resilience is so important.
Tim, I'm wondering if we can take that same question and kind of move it into the future. At the moment, we're running AI on certain workflows, on certain processes, certain settings. There might come a time when the majority of the business runs on AI. How do you then see the importance of having that interim layer at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at kind of the progression, so I think everything started with the chatbot, right? Then I think from chatbot, we went into this whole notion of agentic AI. Then I think from agentic AI, we basically found out, okay, now someone needs to orchestrate those agents. And now I think we basically in the discussion of, okay, all of a sudden these agents also need context and data, right? So I think the the continuation of complexity is ever increasing. I think we started with a chatbot, which is disrupting everything. But I think now all of a sudden we have 5 ingredients which you actually need to figure out. So I think this is really, it needs adaptability. So I think there's not one bullet which answers kind of this, but I think what we have seen is, I think there's always something new. Technology vendors like us also probably put on you, right? So I think you need to also take things with a grain of salt. I think it's not always just operating on the edge, meaning just pushing innovation. I truly believe that incremental mindset we sometimes have in Europe actually is helping us in this regard, because we take it step by step. We think from the business problem backwards, which we want to solve. And then I think the technology becomes the how we do it. But I think let's make sure we identify really the problem we want to solve, and then go backwards for that and think about what is actually needed to solve it. And I think what you've seen over the past, I think 2.5 years, is that there's always something new, which you have to kind of then put into your architecture to succeed. And then if you, again, I think, take a total cost of ownership approach, I think you really have to look at the use case if the AI route is really fast or more cost efficient than sometimes I think taking it more incremental. So I think what I basically would portray back, don't rush it. I think have a strategy, not think incrementally, but execute incrementally. Maybe that's the better way to put it. And I think then you're in good hands. And I think that's also how we approach it actually from the technology side, right? So I think we not just labeled everything AI, right? So we are not an AI data platform or AI powered data platform. I think what we think about is how we can basically do the existing work you already do more effective. And I think the other aspect, and I think that's also a hard decision we made as Lobster, is thinking about how can we give you control. We also had the managed service offering, but we concluded that I think we need to make sure we can serve you best, which is basically putting the innovation in your hand or with your partners to execute. So I think this goes both ways, and I think ultimately, long answer, but I think it's a dialogue and things like today where we can basically converge between customers and technology vendors to really find the right fit for what you need.
I love long answers. And also there will be opportunity to have conversations later tonight outside on the Eidster together, because there's clearly a lot here to unpack and to talk about. We've got some more questions coming in now from the audience. Again, if you've got more, the Q&A is just here at the top. But maybe to dive into something more concrete off the back of that, how much time can customers realistically save thanks to auto mapping? And can the system learn from existing mappings?
Oh, the how much question I would love to ask you, Patrick, because I think you use it hands-on with your team.
Yeah. You're not going to throw out 12 employees by using auto mapping. But what you're going to do is a bit beyond that. You're going to allow maybe less qualified employees to do the auto mapping. So instead of having your best technicians using Lobster, you're going to be able to put maybe somebody who's not quite as qualified. That's going to save you money and time. And the biggest thing is this. What we find out in connecting actual formats, it's not that it takes a lot of time, it's that I need this now. I need to onboard this customer now. I need visibility on this other carrier. So it's the pressure of performing that in that minute. And so the time savings isn't that, it's that I don't have to push this model mapping back until my resource is free in 3 weeks because he's working on a different project. The flexibility and the speed is one of the biggest advantages, not just the time savings. On a very practical level, that's what we're experiencing.
Yeah, and maybe just to build on the time savings, I think one thing, I mean, the feedback we also get from you is I think Lobster is a powerful system, but hard to learn. I think it could really speed up that learning curve. And I think what we see is obviously a lot of the workforce maybe is also retiring who has that specialist knowledge. So I think obviously we help you with the documentation of that. But beyond that, as Patrick said, also onboard more colleagues more quickly and kind of cut down that learning curve. So I think again, one is cost, but the other one is speed, and I think kind of that's an important part of the equation as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think and there are some people in the room here who actually worked on the auto mapping feature for the last few months who can be much more detailed. But what we've seen our internal testing, a mapping which takes, let's say, the 2 or 3 days, a bigger one, you can now do in half a day because lots of it is auto-generated. And there will always be that last mile, the last 20 or 10 or whatever %, which you still need to check, right? So there's always still work to be done. but it just saves you time. And the second part of the question was, can it learn? Yes, it will get better over time. So it definitely learns and improves. We have a team fully working on it every day on the back end also. So you will notice, let's say, improved performance and improved reliability.
Amazing. We've got some other questions to some of the other features touched on in the presentation. How quickly can a new trading partner be onboarded? Can partners self-manage their connections?
That's actually one of the coolest things. The time to onboard a partner is not about the clicks to connect the systems. It's about the coordination. If you've worked in projects like this, your partner doesn't respond, or they respond and then you don't get the email to the next day, or you're busy. That time from beginning to end is the problem, not the technical connection. So what we have here is the ability for the partner to completely onboard themselves, meaning connect their system to your system completely by themselves. And one thing I forgot to mention is it's not just the setup. One of these problems that shows up in companies where it shouldn't show up is certificates expiring. Certificate expires, nobody knows, the connection is gone. I can't connect to my partner because if you run around with that. The certificate's passed over the system. Your partners, as you yourself, get information that within 30 days that certificate expires, you need to replace it. The customer, your partner, can replace that themselves. That's real self-service onboarding. That's what really makes a difference and cuts down the time from beginning to end significantly and saves resources in my own department by letting my partner do almost everything themselves.
That's where I think that integration loop is so important, because the onboarding sits in the beginning, but the certificate renewal, that's 6 months down the road when everybody forgot that Joe was the person to call when the certificate expires, but Trading Partner Manager will send out automated notifications way ahead in time. So that's important. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, you can kind of imagine where this is going, right? Because Trading Partner Manager now does self-service onboarding on the connectivity protocol level. The next thing is that our partners can then also upload example files in Trading Partner Manager. I want to give away too much of Marco's roadmap, but then if you can connect that to Pathfinder with auto mapping, you can see how we can start to glue all of these things together. So the Trading Partner self-service onboards provide example documentation or example files, and we can automatically route that with Pathfinder and start to think about auto mapping before our customer even has to touch it. You can already generate a lot. So I think that's the future in which you want to take this, but always with a human in the loop.
Yeah, and I think also to make it practical. So we were working with a UK retailer in the construction space, actually. We were jointly executing the project, so Lobster and the customer together. And basically the scope was onboard 200 of their tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 suppliers. And we actually moved them off a managed service. And we onboarded in the first 6 months, I think 120 odd or so suppliers. So really quick. Again, what Patrick was saying, there's a lot of collaboration happening. But I think since then, it's basically stalling. We onboarded maybe another 20 in another 6 months' time, but now the collaboration with the tier 3 supplier, who doesn't really have an incentive to collaborate, is really, really slow. And I think that's where then this can be kind of outsourced. So you're not busy, your resources are not busy anymore trying to convince that tier 3 supplier to finally onboard or send the specification, but you basically offload it to them. So I think this is not something we made up, so to say. This is real pain points we see in live projects, and we hope we can help you speed this up in the future and make this really collaborative.
I'd like to take that because I think this may have potentially answered one question. I'll tie 2 AI-related questions together. Number 1, will A eventually generate complete end-to-end integration flows? And on the flip side of that, perhaps, is AI becoming a core part of the platform or an optional add-on?
Yes. So I can take the question. Fully integration flows, you saw now the mapping part. What you did not see yet, which is because it's not there yet, is the function generation side, right? Because it's not only mapping, there are also functions behind the scenes. That's what I meant with our team improving this now step by step in our incremental approach. Looking very much forward also to see what you do with it and what your feedback means. Of course, we want to get as close as possible to fully automatically be able to generate integrations, but we always believe in the human in the loop because we're typically talking about mission critical workloads, right? Which you should just not vibe code, let's say, because you want to stay in control. So yes, it will get more and more accurate and more better, but we believe there's always a human who should validate it. Then the other thing is it's embedded as part of the platform, but you don't have to use it. You can opt out if you want to, and then all the Pathfinder buttons will tactically go away, so you cannot use it. which of course we would feel too bad about because we love for you to use our capabilities. But if there is for whatever reason a reason you do not want to use it, that's completely your choice. There is an opt-out mechanism for this.
Thank you. We're now coming up to where I'm going to send you all on a nice coffee break in a second. So I'll give you one quick question. Maybe we can all have a quick fire on what you're looking forward to moving forward. Enjoyed the presentation. Do you have other ideas on how you can improve AI and integrate it into the platform? Maybe things your dream list for the future of how it might be involved in the platform.
My approach is maybe that I let Tim think of the strategy, Jethro, make it happen in the platform. I'm a bit more practical talking with customers. How we can use AI that's maybe not in Lobster, but like we saw here in the MCP server, the claims management, integrated into practical processes. Being operative is nice, and this is where you can say, look, I can process this in less time and save employees, and they can spend their time doing the high-value tasks. That's what excites me, is removing these things that are just plain boring, but important to do, and that's basically what would excite me and the customers I'm talking to on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think what excites me most about it is actually getting in the dialogue with you, because I think ultimately we can take this now further. You saw how we basically embedded it into the platform, but I think there's what we can also build on top. So more agents where you usually have repetitive work, where whatever data quality, data inspection, this type of workload. And I think that's actually a dialogue I want to have because we want to build with you. I think that's the promise we have now. And so I'm looking more forward to kind of your input on what could be agents you see in Lobster. We have ideas which we also want to validate, but yeah, it's more listening to you than coming up with it ourselves.
Yeah, for me, it's in the, let's say, foreseeable future, how that whole loop comes together with Pathfinder, and we can glue all of these capabilities together, from trading partner onboarding to generation of mappings to then self-healing message flows in the little bit more distant future, really getting that whole loop flowing as easily as possible for you. I think that's the thing which is immediately in front of us, which we are heavily investing in. And then secondly, indeed, thinking about more AI-specific more supply chain-specific use cases. So we have some ideas. We'd love to also talk with you about it, on how we can go deeper on very specific business problems to help you leverage AI in a much faster way.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Please join me in thanking Patrick, Tim, and Jethro for the Lobster presentation.